He's Marler, and this is his music show.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome to another craptastic episode of the Marler Music Show. I am David, otherwise known as the Marler. Hope everyone's having a great day today so far. Hope I can make yours a little bit better, or I might make it a little bit worse by watching me, but whatever works for you, that's what we're going for. Today I'm going to do something that is a few months in the arrears, something that is kind of a not it's long past overdue, but kind of off of a lot of people's minds for the most part. I'm going to do a short overview, not necessarily song by song review. I think sometimes those can get a little boring and mundane and just too long. So I'm going to do a overview of Godsmack's new album, Lighting Up the Sky. Um, this is an album that it's going to be, per everything that we've seen, read from Sully and the other guys in the band, this is going to be their last full length album. They're not going to disband. They're going to continue to tour and everything, just on their past, which is great. A lot of bands, I think, have a lot of success doing that, and there are some bands out there that, quite honestly, need to stop putting albums out and just do that. And depending upon your opinion of this album, you might think that Godsmack is one of those bands. I'll give my opinion on that when this review is over with. So anyway, this album is their first one in about 5 years. The last one was When Legends Rise, which I thought was a fantastic album overall. It wasn't, to me, I've been a Godsmack fan since '90, right after they came out. I saw them twice in their club days, meaning they got signed and were touring the country doing clubs. They came to a club in Memphis called the Daisy. I saw them twice there, and they just started exploding after that first time. So that's how I got into them. Actually, was seeing them live for the first time. But anyway, they're a band that I've liked pretty much since they've been out. I've liked them more and more over the years. I think they've gotten their first several albums. They got better and better. I'm one of those people that they're a band that falls in that category for me. Of I don't think they really have a single album that is front to back, just solid, no skips. Listen to the whole thing all the way through, with the exception of maybe the first few times you listen to it, trying to get a feel for it. For me, anyway, that's the way their music has been. But they've got, every album has probably 70% of the tracks are solid, very good songs. Um, and this album is really no different than that, but it's a little bit. Well, let's just get started, okay? So, like I said, I'm not going to do a total track by track here. I'm going to go more of just a track and then like a bunch of couple, kind of like I did with the Avenged Sevenfold one, except I like this one a lot better. This was not a snoozer for me as much as that one has been. Although I will say it took me a couple times listening to this to kind of get a feel to figure out how I felt about it and the kind of where to put it um, in my mind in terms of where it ranks for me with them. So the first single they released was called "You and I," which is a very Godsmackish sounding song, particularly for their sound that is as it evolved over the past probably 10 years, and because their sound kind of transitioned the past 10 years a little bit. Um, if you remember correctly, if I remember correctly, their first few albums, with the exception of like Voodoo or whatever, and a couple others, Mama. Everything was just hard hitting, punching, metal, in your face, and a lot of their lyrics and feel were kind of doom and gloom, right? Well, they've kind of gone away from that feeling the past few albums. It became a little bit more of a not, happy go lucky kind of thing, but the sound isn't quite as dark as it used to be. Which that dark sound is what attracted me to them. I love dark tones and just heavy riffs and stuff in my music. But they kind of went away from that as much and more of just kind of straightforward rock slash metal kind of thing, which I think has been really good, really good. And this song kind of sticks with that for the most part. It may be, in my mind, the best song on the album, um, at least in the top three for me on this. The next song, Red, White, and Blue, it's just kind of a straightforward hard rock song, with a kind of a patriotic message in it, which is kind of unusual for them. They're not really into that stuff for the most part over their course of their career, but it's a fairly good song. Surrender, very solid song, very Godsmack sounding in terms of their recent few albums. It was, I think, the latest single they put out, or maybe the one before the last one. I'm not really sure. Forgive me, I can't remember. It's a good song. They've been doing it live. Both of these, you and I and Serena, they've both been doing it live. Um, and I actually saw them here in Atlanta about 2 months ago, and I'm planning on maybe next week doing a review of that concert. It was very good, and to me, they're one of the best live bands around. They nail it every night. They've got a lot of energy. Sully is a fantastic frontman, and it still shows to this day, 25 years later. And then moving along, What About Me? It's a fair song. It's one of those that if it comes on, if I'm playing random or whatever on shuffle, if it comes on, I might listen to it, or I might just skip it and go to the next one. There's nothing really special there. Truth's pretty good. It kind of falls into the same category. Hell's Not Dead is one that is kind of falls back into their old catalog a little bit heavier and edgier. Something that I feel like um, has been missing in their albums. They've the past few they've had a couple like that on each album. So it's been they've kind of kept their old sound and still recreated themselves over the past few, and this one's no different. And I do one thing I do like about this one and the past couple is they've kind of mixed in some sounds and kind of reinvented themselves. They haven't gone like balls to the wall and just totally flipped themselves the way Avenged Sevenfold has, but they have experimented some and done more of an evolution of their sound than anything else. I think when Legends Rise, that album was maybe a further departure than they've ever had from the original sound, and it was kind of a precursor for this one. And it kind of you can tell in this one, they've kind of evolved through that album up to this, and it was kind of a natural progression. I feel like. So you got Soul on Fire, another good solid rock song that is I think they've done it live a couple of times. They didn't here in Atlanta. It's solid song. Let's Go, very straightforward and heavy, very straightforward rocker. Best of Times is a little bit slower or whatever. Once again, one of those that it can come on and I might listen to it, might not. It's not one of those that like when it comes on, I'm not going to skip. It doesn't fall in the category for me at all. Growing Old, decent song. Honestly, probably my least favorite on the album. It's okay. Um, but then it leads up to the last song, Lighting Up the Sky, which probably is my favorite on the album and arguably the best song on the album. Um, the way the intro just starts, but it's real low, and then it just builds up and builds up and builds up and builds up, and all of a sudden it goes into this riff that is I'm not musically totally inclined, but I can hear a little bit, and it's got a very very similar style, and it may be the exact same one as the middle to the end of Moon Baby, which Moon Baby is one of my favorite songs from them ever. Possibly my favorite song from them ever. In fact, when they did Lighting Up the Sky, when I saw them, they did this song. And at the end of it, or towards the middle end, they did that middle end part of Moon Baby and with it. And it flows very well because this song towards the end sounds a lot like that. And this song, it's kind of a fitting ending song to be on the last song of their last album, um, because at the very end, it's got a lot of different sounds and lyrics and cuts from earlier tracks in their career to kind of end it out. It's very cool the way they did that. But it's probably my favorite on the album, probably one of the best on the album, if not the best. And I feel like if for a song to end their album run, this was probably a very good one. Maybe not quite as heavy or whatever, but it's a very good song, and it just proves that they can, they've really come a long way in their career in terms of being able to reinvent themselves a little bit and still stay relevant and still put on a fantastic show. These guys are all in their mid to late 50s. They actually got signed kind of late for rock bands. Um, I just saw an interview with Shannon Larkin just recently, over the past couple of years, got sober completely, and so they're very they've cleaned themselves up personally, which is fantastic. And I think maybe it's shown in their music in terms of just the maturity of it. And so this is no different. So yeah, this album for me, in a nutshell, it's good. I'm not going to say it's very good. I think it's got 3 to 4 really good tracks on it. The rest of them are mediocre at best. I feel like this is not an album I'm just going to like pop out and listen to just out of the blue necessarily. But it's good. It's solid. It's certainly not the worst thing that's come out in a long time. There's been a lot of other things that have come out and been a lot worse than this. So it's one of those things. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. Streaming, YouTube, wherever you go to find your music, I'd give it a listen. I'm sure most of y'all have by now. Good album. Um, for me, where it ranks in their catalog, it's in the bottom half. I'm not going to say it's their worst. Um, although it might be. My look, I'm not even sure what my favorite album of theirs is. Uh, maybe Faceless, maybe Awake, possibly one of those two. Like I said in the beginning, to me, they don't have an album that just song after song after song. You just like, oh my god, oh my god. But they've got a lot of really good ones on every one, and so I'm not going to give it. I'm not going to say it's the worst, but it's not in the top half. It's probably in the bottom half somewhere. I don't know. It is hard for me to rank Godsmack's albums for that reason. And even though they're one of my favorite bands of all time, I've seen them probably God, I think I've seen them like 15 times now. And they're one of those bands I never get tired of seeing because it's going to be a good show. The only thing I do have against their live performances are that they like. I can't remember a single time of seeing them, and I've only seen them as an opener 3 or 4 times maybe. Most of the times I've seen them have been the headliner. Now, in the early days, they were headlining, they had 1, 2 albums, whatever. So you can't really play more than about an hour and a half anyway. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Since probably Godsmack 4 and forward, I've never seen them play more than an hour and a half. And for me, they've got so many good songs that I feel like they could easily fill a 2 hour set. They typically only do Whatever and Voodoo off of their first album when they could quite honestly do about 4 or 5 off that album. They only do Awake off of Awake when they could do a couple more off of that. Same thing about with God. In fact, this last time I saw them, they did nothing off Godsmack 4. Nothing. And there are several songs on there that I think are fantastic. But over the past couple tours, I've seen them. They've done nothing off that, and this tour they still did I think 3 to 4 songs off of When Legends Rise, which I love When Legends Rise. But for me, cut a couple of those out, add a couple older things in, or just expand your set. But it is what it is, regardless of the length of the set for them. They are still a fantastic, fantastic live band. They put on a really good show. And one thing about it, when you pay to see them, you're going to get your money's worth. And they're a band that, as long as they keep touring, and as long as I have the um, ability to go see them, I will. And I'm kind of getting ahead of myself on the concert review, but that's just the way. That's what the kind of band they are for me. So anyway, that's my take on this album. Once again, it's really good. It's not great. It's not horrible. Um, but it's solid. And as far as where it ranks for me with theirs, I don't know. It's somewhere in the bottom half, but it's good. Now, the big question is if this is their last full recording for sure, if that's definitely going to happen. Um, is this, did they go out with a bang with it? I've got to say no, only because I feel like they could have put out a little bit better material for this album. Um, I think that if you're going into something thinking it's going to be your last album, you might have approached it a little differently. Of course, I've seen interviews where this is kind of what they wanted. They were going to make an album that they thought was great and yada yada yada, and for themselves, which is what bands should do. I agree. Um, and that's what it was going to be, and that's what this is, and that's fine. It just, for me, I'd have liked to have heard of something a little more heavier, a little more retro for their sound to kind of, go full circle. But say la vie, that's not what they did here. Um, but it does, for me, it doesn't diminish their legend, and so to speak, of their catalog. It's still very good of it, a very successful career, and it's not over. Just in terms of recording, it's over supposedly. So as long as they can tour for a while longer, several more years, get to see them a few more times, be out there for the fans to put on a show, help everybody forget about their troubles for an hour and a half. That's what it's all about anyway. So anyway, that's my take on this album. Like I say, next episode possibly going to be a review of the concert I saw with Godsmack here in Atlanta a couple months ago. Um, as always, in the comments, let me know what you think about this album if you've listened to it. Let me know about other albums you'd like for me to review, or any topics you'd like me to cover on any episode. You can do it in the comments. You can also email me at themerlinmusicshow@gmail.com. Let me know what you think, guys. So I'm going to sign off on this glorious afternoon. As I always do, I will finish by saying this: be good to each other, be good to yourself, and life will be good to you. Peace.